The gymnasium at Haywood County High School was packed that Tuesday afternoon in March 2014. The entire sophomore class had gathered for what was supposed to be a routine fitness assessment, nothing more than basic measurements and a few exercises to gauge our physical education progress. I remember the smell of floor wax and the echo of sneakers squeaking against polished wood as we lined up in our mandatory gym uniforms. At 16, I was carrying about 60 pounds more than I should have been. The numbers on the scale had been climbing steadily since middle school, a combination of stress eating, genetics, and a sedentary lifestyle that revolved around video games and fast food. My parents, both working double shifts to make ends meet, had little time to monitor my eating habits or encourage physical activity. I had become comfortable in my isolation, finding solace in online communities where my physical appearance didn't matter. The fitness assessment was meant to be private, with individual students stepping forward to complete each station while others waited their turn. But when it came time for the body composition measurements, something went wrong with the usual system. Mrs. Williams, our gym teacher, was called away to handle an emergency, leaving us unsupervised for what felt like an eternity but was probably only 10 minutes. That's when Cody Brantley decided to take charge. Cody was everything I wasn't, captain of the varsity football team despite being only a sophomore, lean and muscular with the kind of effortless confidence that came from never having to question your place in the social hierarchy. His father owned the largest farming operation in the county, and Cody had grown up assuming that his opinions mattered more than most people's feelings. "Hey, everyone, check this out." Cody's voice cut through the gymnasium chatter like a blade. I was standing on the scale, waiting for Mrs. Williams to return, when I realized he was talking about me. "Looks like Billy here is breaking some records today." The gymnasium fell silent. 200 faces turned toward me, and I felt the weight of their attention like a physical force. I stepped off the scale, my face burning with embarrassment, but Cody wasn't finished. "Come on, Billy, don't be shy," he continued, his voice carrying easily across the space. "Share with the class. What's the damage? 250? 260? I mumbled something about it being private, but Cody had already found his rhythm. He had an audience, and he was going to make the most of it. "I mean, I knew you were big, but this is impressive even for you. You're like a walking advertisement for what happens when you give up on yourself." His words came out in a mock encouraging tone, as if he were trying to be helpful. "Seriously, guys, Billy here is proof that it's possible to eat your way out of ever having to worry about dating or sports or really anything that requires, basic human mobility." The laughter started as a few snickers from Cody's usual crew, but it spread like wildfire. Soon, nearly half the class was laughing, some openly, others hiding behind their hands. The sound was deafening, a roar of cruel amusement that seemed to bounce off the walls and amplify itself. "The thing is," Cody continued, warming to his theme, "I actually feel bad for the guy. I mean, look at him. He's not just fat, he's like, monumentally fat. Like, historically fat. We're talking about someone who's basically given up on being human." I stood there, frozen, feeling like I was watching this happen to someone else. The scale behind me read 247 pounds, a number that felt like it was branded into my brain. But more than the number, it was Cody's words that cut deepest. Not just the cruelty of them, but the casual way he delivered them, as if my humiliation was just another form of entertainment. "Hey, Cody, that's enough," came a voice from the crowd. Emma Mae Johnson, one of the quieter kids in our class, had stepped forward. But her intervention only seemed to fuel Cody's performance. "Oh, come on, Emma Mae. I'm just being honest. Someone needs to tell Billy the truth. Maybe if more people were straight with him, he wouldn't have let himself get to this point." Cody turned back to me, and for a moment, his expression almost looked sympathetic. "Seriously, Billy, I'm trying to help you here. You're 16 years old, and you're already bigger than most adults. Where do you think this is going to end?" The worst part wasn't the laughter or even the words themselves. It was the way Cody looked at me, not with hatred or anger, but with a kind of detached curiosity, as if I were a science experiment that had gone wrong. To him, I wasn't a person with feelings. I was a problem to be solved or, failing that, a source of amusement. When Mrs. Williams finally returned, the laughter died down quickly, but the damage was done. She took one look at my face and Cody's smug expression and seemed to understand that something had happened, but by then it was too late to undo it. The rest of the fitness assessment passed in a blur. I completed the required exercises mechanically, my mind elsewhere, already planning my escape. The story spread through the school like wildfire. By the end of the day, it seemed like everyone had heard some version of what had happened in the gym. Some people were sympathetic, offering awkward words of comfort or shooting disapproving looks at Cody, but others found it hilarious, and I caught groups of students whispering and pointing as I walked down the hallways. The nickname 250 followed me around for weeks, a constant reminder of that moment on the scale. Even students who hadn't been in the gym that day knew the story, and Cody had achieved something remarkable. He had managed to distill my entire identity down to a single, humiliating moment. That night, alone in my room, I made a decision that would shape the next decade of my life. I wasn't going to let Cody Brantley be right about me. I wasn't going to be the cautionary tale he had painted for his audience. I was going to transform myself, not just physically but completely, and someday, somehow, I was going to make him see exactly how wrong he had been. The transformation didn't happen overnight. In fact, for the first few months after the gymnasium incident, I actually gained weight. The humiliation had sent me deeper into emotional eating, and I found myself consuming entire bags of chips or pints of ice cream while replaying Cody's words over and over in my mind. The harder I tried not to think about that day, the more it consumed me. My parents noticed the change in my behavior but didn't know how to address it. My father, Wayne, was a shift supervisor at the Cargill plant who worked long hours and had his own struggles with weight. My mother, Betty Sue, was a CNA at the nursing home who understood the health implications of obesity but was too exhausted from her shifts to mount a comprehensive intervention. They loved me, but they were fighting their own battles, and I was largely left to figure things out on my own. The turning point came 6 months later, in September 2014, when I stepped on a scale at home and saw a number that shocked me into action: 267 pounds. I had gained 20 pounds since the incident with Cody, and for the first time, I truly understood what he had been trying to tell me. I wasn't just overweight. I was on a path towards serious health problems, social isolation, and a life defined by limitations I had imposed on myself. That same week, I discovered a YouTube channel run by a former obese man named Bobby Ray Tucker who had lost over 150 pounds and transformed his life. His story resonated with me because he talked openly about the psychological aspects of weight loss, the shame, the self-sabotage, the way society treats you differently based on your appearance. But more than that, he offered a roadmap that seemed achievable, focusing on small, sustainable changes rather than dramatic overhauls. I started with walking. Every morning before school, I would wake up at 5:30 a.m. and walk around our neighborhood for 30 minutes. It was brutal at first. I was out of breath within minutes, and my knees and ankles ached from carrying so much weight. But I kept at it, gradually increasing the distance and pace as my endurance improved. The dietary changes were even harder. I had to completely rewire my relationship with food, learning to see it as fuel rather than comfort. I started tracking everything I ate, weighing portions, and educating myself about nutrition. The first month was hell. I was constantly hungry, irritable, and fighting cravings that felt almost overwhelming. But slowly, gradually, I began to see results. By the end of my sophomore year, I had lost 30 pounds. It wasn't dramatic enough for most people to notice, but I could feel the difference. I had more energy, my clothes fit better, and most importantly, I was developing a sense of discipline and self-efficacy that extended beyond just weight loss. Junior year brought new challenges. Cody and I were in several classes together, and while he had moved on to other targets for his cruel entertainment, his presence was a constant reminder of my motivation. I would sit in AP history or chemistry, watching him coast through classes on his natural charm and athletic prowess, and I would think about how he had dismissed me so casually. That anger, channeled properly, became fuel for my transformation. I joined the wrestling team that year, not because I thought I could be competitive, but because I needed the structure and intensity of organized athletics. Coach Patterson was skeptical at first. I was still carrying about 50 pounds of excess weight, but he admired my work ethic and dedication. Wrestling taught me about mental toughness, about pushing through physical discomfort, and about the satisfaction that comes from earning your achievements through pure effort. The progress accelerated. By the end of junior year, I was down to 195 pounds, and people were starting to notice. Teachers who had barely acknowledged me before began engaging me in conversations. Classmates who had never bothered to learn my name were suddenly friendly. It was both gratifying and disturbing to realize how much my social value had been tied to my appearance. But the real transformation was mental. The discipline required to lose weight and maintain an exercise routine had spilled over into every area of my life. My grades improved dramatically. I developed better study habits, time management skills, and the confidence to participate in class discussions. I started to see myself as someone who could set goals and achieve them, regardless of the obstacles. Cody, meanwhile, was having a different kind of senior year. His football career had peaked in sophomore year, and injuries had limited his playing time. His grades were mediocre, and despite his father's connections, he was struggling to get into the colleges he wanted. I watched from a distance as he seemed to coast on his reputation while I was building something more substantial. Senior year brought new opportunities. I was elected to student council, joined the debate team, and started tutoring younger students in math and science. I had discovered that I had a talent for explaining complex concepts in simple terms, and I found genuine satisfaction in helping others overcome academic challenges. It was during this time that I first considered the possibility of becoming a teacher or trainer. By graduation, I weighed 175 pounds and had maintained that weight for over 6 months. More importantly, I had developed a comprehensive understanding of fitness, nutrition, and the psychology of behavior change. I had read dozens of books on these topics, followed numerous online courses, and experimented with different training methodologies on myself. Cody and I barely interacted during senior year, but I was acutely aware of his presence. He seemed smaller somehow, less commanding than he had been as a sophomore. His cruel comment about my giving up on being human had become a source of strength for me. I had not only reclaimed my humanity, but had become more disciplined, more focused, and more accomplished than I had ever imagined possible. As we walked across the stage at graduation, I caught Cody's eye for just a moment. He nodded at me with what might have been respect or simply polite acknowledgement, but I could see something else in his expression, a recognition that I had become someone different from the person he had humiliated 3 years earlier. College was where my transformation truly crystallized. I majored in exercise science with a minor in psychology, diving deep into the academic foundations of everything I had learned through trial and error. I worked part-time at the campus fitness center, helping other students develop workout routines and overcome their own fitness challenges. Many of them had stories similar to mine, moments of humiliation or self-doubt that had motivated them to change their lives. I discovered that I had a gift for training others. I could see past their current limitations to their potential, and I had the patience and understanding that comes from having been in their position. I also had the credibility that comes from having achieved a dramatic transformation myself. When I told clients that I understood their struggles, they believed me because they could see the evidence of my own journey. By my senior year of college, I was already building a reputation as a trainer who specialized in helping people overcome significant weight loss challenges. I had started a blog documenting my own journey and offering advice to others, and it had attracted a following of several thousand readers. I was also working towards certifications in personal training, nutrition coaching, and sports psychology. The plan that had been forming in my mind since that day in the gymnasium was becoming clearer. I wasn't just going to transform myself. I was going to build a career around helping others do the same. And someday, somehow, I was going to find myself face-to-face with Cody Brantley again. After graduating from college in 2018 with a degree in exercise science, I moved back to Brownsville with a clear mission. I had spent 4 years not just transforming my body, but building the knowledge and credentials necessary to help others do the same. My college experience had given me the theoretical foundation, but my personal journey had given me something more valuable, the deep understanding of what it feels like to be dismissed, humiliated, and written off because of your physical appearance. I started working at Fitness First, the largest gym in town, as a personal trainer. The irony wasn't lost on me that this was the same gym where Cody Brantley had worked out during high school, the place where he had built the physique that had made him feel entitled to mock others. But Cody was long gone, having moved to Nashville after a mediocre college career and a series of failed attempts to make something of his athletic background. My approach to training was different from most of the other trainers at Fitness First. While they focused primarily on helping already fit people optimize their performance, I specialized in working with clients who were just beginning their fitness journeys. I understood the shame, the self-doubt, and the psychological barriers that kept people from committing to change. More importantly, I knew how to help them overcome those barriers. My first major success story was Donna Lynn Mitchell, a 34-year-old mother of two who had gained 80 pounds during her pregnancies and had been unable to lose the weight for 5 years. She came to me broken, convinced that she was destined to be overweight for the rest of her life. Her husband had started making cruel comments about her appearance, and she was considering divorce rather than continue living with the constant criticism. Working with Donna Lynn reminded me of my own journey. She had been athletic in high school, but life had gotten in the way: marriage, children, career pressures, and the gradual accumulation of habits that had led to significant weight gain. Like me, she had experienced a moment of profound humiliation that had finally motivated her to seek help. Over the course of 18 months, Donna Lynn lost 75 pounds and completely transformed her relationship with food and exercise. But more than that, she rediscovered her confidence and self-worth. She left her marriage, started her own business, and became one of my most enthusiastic advocates, referring dozens of friends and family members to my training services. Word began to spread about my methods. I wasn't just helping people lose weight, I was helping them rebuild their entire lives. My approach was holistic, addressing not just the physical aspects of fitness but the psychological and emotional factors that had led to their struggles in the first place. I incorporated elements of cognitive behavioral therapy, motivational interviewing, and positive psychology into my training programs. By 2020, I had built a waiting list of clients and was considering opening my own facility. The COVID-19 pandemic actually accelerated my plans as the demand for personalized, virtual training services exploded. I adapted quickly, developing online programs that could help people maintain their fitness routines from home. My blog, which had started as a simple documentation of my own journey, evolved into a comprehensive resource with workout plans, nutrition guides, and motivational content. The success was gratifying, but it wasn't enough. Every time I helped someone overcome their struggles with weight and self-image, I thought about Cody Brantley and the casual cruelty he had displayed that day in the gymnasium. I wondered if he had any idea how his words had affected me, and more importantly, I wondered if he had continued to treat other people the same way. In late 2021, I finally opened my own facility, Transform Fitness Studio. It was a boutique gym designed specifically for people who were intimidated by traditional fitness centers. The environment was welcoming, non-judgmental, and focused on personal growth rather than competition. I hired a small team of trainers who shared my philosophy and had their own stories of transformation. The business was successful beyond my expectations. Within 6 months, we had a full roster of clients and a waiting list that stretched for weeks. I was featured in the Brownsville Statesgraphic as a success story, the hometown kid who had overcome obesity to become a successful entrepreneur and fitness expert. The attention was flattering, but it also made me more visible in the community. That visibility would soon lead to an unexpected reunion. It was a Tuesday evening in March 2024, almost exactly 10 years after the gymnasium incident, when Cody Brantley walked into Transform Fitness Studio. I was finishing up a session with a client when I saw him through the glass partition of my office, filling out paperwork at the front desk. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. Cody looked different than I remembered. He was still recognizably the same person, but the years had not been kind to him. The lean, muscular build of his high school years had given way to a soft, doughy physique. He was carrying at least 50 pounds of excess weight, most of it concentrated around his midsection. His hair was thinning, and there was a defeated quality to his posture that was completely at odds with the confident athlete I remembered. My first impulse was satisfaction. The cocky teenager who had humiliated me in front of our entire class was now struggling with the same issues he had once mocked me for. There was a poetic justice to the situation that felt almost too perfect to be real. But as I watched him awkwardly navigate the intake process, clearly uncomfortable in his own skin, I felt something unexpected: empathy. I recognized the body language, the way he avoided eye contact, the slightly defensive posture that comes from feeling judged based on your appearance. He was experiencing, perhaps for the first time in his life, what it felt like to be the person seeking help rather than the one passing judgment. I decided to handle the initial consultation myself, though I didn't immediately reveal my identity. I wanted to understand what had brought Cody to this point, what had happened in the 10 years since high school that had led him to walk through my doors. "So, Cody," I said, settling into the chair across from him in my office, "tell me about your fitness goals and what brought you here today." He shifted uncomfortably, still not making eye contact. "I need to lose weight. A lot of weight. I've gained about 60 pounds over the past 5 years, and I can't seem to stop the slide. My doctor says I'm pre-diabetic, my blood pressure is high, and if I don't make some changes soon, I'm looking at serious health problems." His voice was different than I remembered, quieter, less confident. The easy arrogance of his teenage years had been replaced by something that sounded almost like shame. "What's been driving the weight gain?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral and professional. Cody sighed heavily. "Life, I guess. After college, nothing really went according to plan. I thought I'd play professional football, but that didn't work out. Then I thought I'd go into farming with my dad, but we had a falling out. I've been bouncing between jobs for the past few years, and I've been dealing with some depression. Food became my way of coping." It was a story I had heard many times before, but hearing it from Cody added layers of complexity I hadn't expected. The golden boy of Haywood County High School had struggled with the same demons that plagued so many of my clients: unmet expectations, career disappointments, and the gradual erosion of self-worth that often leads to destructive behaviors. "Have you tried to lose weight before?" I continued. "Multiple times. I'll do well for a few weeks, maybe even a few months, but then something happens, stress at work, relationship problems, whatever, and I fall back into old patterns. I end up heavier than when I started." He finally looked up at me, and I could see the frustration and defeat in his eyes. "I'm hoping that working with a professional trainer will give me the accountability and structure I need to finally make this stick." We talked for another 20 minutes about his health history, his current eating habits, and his previous attempts at weight loss. Throughout the conversation, I found myself studying his face, looking for any sign that he recognized me. But Cody seemed completely focused on his own problems, and it became clear that he had no idea who I was. As we wrapped up the consultation, I made a decision that surprised even me. Instead of revealing my identity immediately, I decided to take Cody on as a client. I wanted to see if the person who had once been so casually cruel could be helped, could learn empathy and humility through his own struggles. It was an experiment, but it was also an opportunity for both of us. "I think I can help you, Cody," I said, standing up and extending my hand. "But I need to know that you're ready to commit to this process. Real transformation requires not just physical work, but mental and emotional work as well. Are you prepared for that?" He shook my hand firmly, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the old Cody, the confident athlete who believed he could achieve anything he set his mind to. "Yes," he said. "I'm ready. I need this to work." As he left the studio that evening, I sat in my office trying to process what had just happened. The universe had presented me with an opportunity one had fantasized about for years, the chance to confront Cody Brantley, to show him how wrong he had been about me, to make him pay for the humiliation he had caused. But now that the moment was here, I found myself questioning what I really wanted to achieve. Was this about revenge, or was it about something more meaningful? Could I help Cody transform his life the way I had transformed mine? And if I could, what would that say about the power of forgiveness and the possibility of redemption? The next few months would provide the answers to those questions. Cody's first workout session was scheduled for the following Thursday. I had spent the intervening days thinking about how to approach this unique situation. Part of me wanted to reveal my identity immediately and watch his reaction, but I was also curious to see how he would respond to training without the weight of our history coloring the interaction. When he arrived at the studio, Cody was wearing an oversized t-shirt and baggy shorts, clearly trying to hide his body. I recognized the strategy. It was the same one I had used during my own transformation. The shame and self-consciousness were written all over his body language. "Ready to get started?" I asked, leading him to the main training area. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I began with a basic fitness assessment, much like the one that had started this whole journey 10 years earlier. Cody struggled with movements that should have been simple for someone with his athletic background. His flexibility was poor, his cardiovascular endurance was virtually non-existent, and his strength had diminished significantly from his high school peak. "This is embarrassing," he muttered after struggling to complete a set of modified push-ups. "I used to be an athlete. I used to be in great shape." "The past doesn't define your potential," I said, helping him up from the floor. "What matters is what you do from this point forward. Everyone starts somewhere, and everyone has setbacks. The key is learning from them and moving forward." It was advice I had given to hundreds of clients, but saying it to Cody felt different. I was essentially offering him the same compassion and understanding that I wish someone had shown me during my lowest points. Over the next few weeks, I put Cody through a carefully designed program that focused on building basic fitness while addressing the psychological aspects of his struggle. I could see that his relationship with his body was complicated. He was angry at himself for letting his fitness decline, but he was also scared of the work required to change it. During our sessions, Cody began to open up about his life after high school. The picture he painted was one of gradual disappointment and declining expectations. His football career had ended with a knee injury during his sophomore year of college. His relationship with his father had deteriorated when he refused to take over the family farm, preferring to pursue what he called different opportunities. But those opportunities had proven elusive, and he had spent the past several years in a series of dead-end jobs that left him feeling unfulfilled and increasingly depressed. "I know this sounds pathetic," he said one day while recovering between sets, "but I think I peaked in high school. Everything since then has been downhill. I used to be somebody, you know? I used to matter." I found myself in the strange position of feeling sympathy for someone who had once been my tormentor. Cody's struggles were real, and his pain was genuine. The confident teenager who had humiliated me had been replaced by a man who was dealing with his own demons, his own sense of failure and inadequacy. But I also remembered the casual cruelty he had displayed, the way he had dismissed my humanity for the entertainment of others. The contrast between his current vulnerability and his past behavior was stark, and it raised questions about accountability and growth. "You know," I said carefully, "sometimes the lessons we learn from our lowest points are more valuable than the victories we experience at our peaks. It's easy to be confident when everything is going your way. Real character is revealed when you're struggling and have to fight for every small improvement." Cody looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You sound like you're speaking from experience." "I am," I replied, deciding to offer just a hint of my own story. I wasn't always a trainer. I had my own struggles with weight and self-image. The work I do now is partly because I understand what it feels like to be where you are. He nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense. You seem to get it in a way that other trainers I've worked with didn't. You don't make me feel judged or inadequate." The irony of that statement was almost overwhelming. The person who had once made me feel more judged and inadequate than anyone else was now praising me for creating a non-judgmental environment. But I also realized that this was exactly the kind of trainer I had set out to become, someone who could help others overcome the same challenges I had faced. As the weeks passed, Cody's progress was steady if not spectacular. He was losing weight gradually, building strength, and developing better eating habits. More importantly, he seemed to be regaining some confidence and self-respect. The defeated man who had walked into my studio was slowly being replaced by someone who was taking control of his life. But I could see that he was still carrying emotional baggage that went beyond just physical fitness. During one particularly intense workout, he suddenly stopped mid-exercise and sat down heavily on a bench. "I need to tell you something," he said, breathing heavily. "I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I need to get it off my chest." I sat down across from him, curious about what he was going to reveal. "In high school, I was kind of a bully," he continued, staring at his hands. "I said and did things that I'm not proud of. I hurt people, made fun of them, made them feel small because it made me feel big. I've been carrying that guilt for years, and I think it's part of what led to all this." He gestured to his body. "I think on some level, I felt like I deserved to be punished for the way I treated other people. I felt my heart rate increase, but I kept my expression neutral." "Can you give me an example?" Cody was quiet for a long moment, clearly wrestling with difficult memories. "There was this kid in my class, Billy. He was overweight, kind of quiet, kept to himself. One day during a fitness assessment, I don't know what got into me. I humiliated him in front of the entire class, called him fat, made jokes about his weight, basically treated him like he wasn't even human. He looked up at me with genuine anguish in his eyes. I can still see the look on his face. He was so hurt, so embarrassed. And I just kept going, kept making it worse because everyone was laughing and I was feeding off their attention. It was one of the cruelest things I've ever done, and I've regretted it every day since. The moment I had been anticipating for months had finally arrived, but not in the way I had imagined. Instead of me confronting Cody with his past behavior, he was confronting himself, taking responsibility for his actions and expressing genuine remorse. What happened to Billy? I asked, my voice carefully controlled. I don't know. We didn't really interact after that. I think he might have lost weight later in high school, but I was too ashamed to ever apologize or even acknowledge what I had done. I heard he went to college somewhere out of state, but I have no idea what happened to him after that. Cody looked at me directly. I know this might sound crazy, but sometimes I fantasize about finding him and apologizing. I want him to know that what I did was wrong, that it wasn't about him at all. It was about my own insecurities and need to feel superior. I want him to know that he didn't deserve to be treated that way, and that I'm sorry for any pain I caused him. I sat there for a moment, processing what I had just heard. This was not the Cody Brantley I had built up in my mind over the past 10 years. The cruel, unrepentant bully of my imagination had been replaced by a man who was genuinely wrestling with the consequences of his actions, who was carrying genuine guilt and remorse. Cody, I said slowly, I need to tell you something. The words hung in the air between us as I struggled to find the right way to reveal the truth. Cody looked at me with curiosity, perhaps sensing that something significant was about to happen. My full name is Billy Ray Henderson, I said simply. I was in your sophomore class at Haywood County High School. I was the kid you humiliated in the gymnasium 10 years ago. Cody's face went through a series of rapid changes: confusion, recognition, shock, and finally, horror. He stared at me as if he were seeing a ghost, his mouth opening and closing wordlessly. Oh my God, he whispered finally. Oh my God, Billy. I didn't recognize you. You look completely different. You. He trailed off, shaking his head in disbelief. I lost over 90 pounds, I said matter-of-factly. I also got into the best shape of my life, earned a degree in exercise science, and built a successful career helping people transform their lives. All of that started the day you called me fat in front of our entire class. Cody's face had gone pale, and I could see him processing the implications of what I had just told him. He had been training with his former victim for months, pouring out his insecurities and vulnerabilities to the person he had once tormented. Billy, I don't know what to say. I can't believe this. All this time, you've been helping me, and I had no idea. He put his head in his hands. You must hate me. You must think I'm getting exactly what I deserve. I had imagined this moment countless times over the years, but the reality was far more complex than any of my fantasies. I had expected to feel triumphant, vindicated, powerful. Instead, I felt something closer to sadness for the pain we had both carried, for the years that had been shaped by a moment of teenage cruelty, for the complicated nature of human growth and redemption. I don't hate you, Cody, I said, and I realized as I said it that it was true. I did for a long time. That day in the gym, the things you said, they nearly destroyed me. I went home that night and seriously considered ending my life. Cody looked up at me sharply, his eyes wide with shock. But I didn't, I continued. Instead, I channeled that pain into motivation. I used your cruelty as fuel to transform myself, not just physically but mentally and emotionally. In a strange way, you did me a favor, though I'm sure that wasn't your intention. Jesus, Billy, Cody said, his voice barely above a whisper. I had no idea. I never thought. I mean, I knew what I said was wrong, but I didn't realize how deeply it affected you. The thing is, I said, I could have revealed who I was on the first day you walked in here. I could have turned you away, refused to train you, or made your life miserable in return. But I didn't. Do you know why? Cody shook his head, still looking stunned. Because over the past 10 years, I've learned something important about revenge and forgiveness. Hurting you wouldn't undo the pain you caused me. It wouldn't make me feel better or more whole. But helping you transform your life the way I transformed mine? That actually means something. That creates value in the world instead of just perpetuating pain. Cody was quiet for a long moment, absorbing what I had said. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "I don't deserve your help," he said. "I don't deserve your kindness or your forgiveness. What I did to you is unforgivable." "Maybe," I said. "But forgiveness isn't always about what people deserve. Sometimes it's about what we need to do to move forward. I forgave you years ago, Cody, not because you earned it, but because carrying that anger was poisoning my own life." Cody looked at me with an expression of wonder and confusion. "How? How can you forgive someone who treated you so cruelly? How can you help someone who caused you so much pain?" I thought about that question for a moment, trying to articulate something I had been learning gradually over the years. Because I realized now that the person who hurt me 10 years ago isn't the same person sitting here today. You've grown, you've suffered, you've learned from your mistakes. The Cody who humiliated me was a scared teenager who thought that putting others down would make him feel better about himself. The Cody sitting here now is a man who recognizes that behavior is wrong and feels genuine remorse for it. Cody wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I am so sorry, Billy. I know those words aren't enough, but I need you to know how deeply I regret what I did to you. If I could go back and change it, I would in a heartbeat." "I believe you," I said, "and I accept your apology. But more than that, I want you to understand something important. The work we've been doing together these past few months, that's your real apology. Every time you show up here, every time you push through a difficult workout, every time you make a healthy choice, you're proving that people can change. You're honoring the lesson that came from our shared pain." We sat in silence for several minutes, both of us processing the weight of this revelation. Finally, Cody spoke up. "What happens now? Do you still want to train me? I would understand if you didn't. I would understand if you never wanted to see me again." I had been dreading this question because I wasn't entirely sure of the answer myself. The professional part of me knew that Cody was making real progress, and that abandoning him now would set back his transformation significantly. But there was also a personal component that was harder to navigate. "I want to continue training you," I said finally. "But our relationship has to change. Up until now, you've been just another client. Now you're something more complicated. You're someone who hurt me deeply, but who also represents the possibility of redemption. I need you to understand that this isn't going to be easy for either of us." Cody nodded eagerly. "I understand. Whatever you need from me, whatever boundaries you want to set, I'll respect them. I want to make this right somehow. Then let's talk about what that looks like." The weeks that followed our revelation were among the most emotionally complex of my professional career. Training Cody had always been challenging because of his physical limitations and psychological barriers, but now there was an added layer of history and emotion that colored every interaction. Cody, to his credit, approached the situation with a humility and dedication that surprised me. He arrived early for every session, followed his nutrition plan religiously, and pushed himself harder than he ever had before. It was as if he saw his physical transformation as a form of penance, a way to atone for the pain he had caused. But I also noticed changes in my own approach to training him. Where I had once been simply professional, I now found myself more invested in his success. Not because I wanted him to succeed for his own sake, necessarily, but because his success or failure felt like a reflection of my own ability to forgive and move forward. "You're pushing me harder than you used to," Cody observed one day after a particularly grueling workout. "Am I?" I asked, though I knew he was right. "Yeah, it's like you're testing me or something. Like you want to see how much I can take." I paused to consider his observation. Maybe I am testing you. Maybe I need to see that you're serious about change, not just in your body but in your character. Cody wiped sweat from his face with a towel. "And if I fail the test? Then we'll both have learned something important," I said. "But I don't think you're going to fail." The truth was, Cody was exceeding my expectations in every way. In the 3 months since our revelation, he had lost 35 pounds and gained significant strength and endurance. More importantly, he was developing the mental resilience that comes from pushing through discomfort and achieving difficult goals. Our conversations during training sessions had also evolved. Where we had once talked about his struggles with weight and career disappointments, we now found ourselves discussing deeper topics: the nature of forgiveness, the possibility of redemption, and the ways that our past experiences shape our present choices. "I've been thinking a lot about empathy," Cody said one day while stretching after a workout. I thought I understood what it meant, but I don't think I really got it until I experienced what it's like to be judged based on your appearance." "What do you mean?" I asked, though I suspected I knew where he was going. "When I walk into a room now, I can feel people making assumptions about me based on how I look. They see the extra weight, the lack of fitness, and they make judgments about my character, my discipline, my worth as a person. And I realize that's exactly what I did to you and probably to other people." Cody paused, collecting his thoughts. "The thing is, I always thought those judgments were accurate. I thought that people who were overweight were lazy or undisciplined or just didn't care about themselves. I had no idea how complex the relationship between weight and self-worth could be, how many factors go into someone's physical condition. This was exactly the kind of insight I had hoped Cody would develop, but hearing him articulate it so clearly was still moving. He was learning empathy not through abstract concepts but through lived experience, which made the lesson far more powerful and lasting. "That's one of the reasons I decided to become a trainer," I told him. "I wanted to help people who had been where I was, people who felt like society had written them off because of their appearance. But I also wanted to challenge the assumptions that people like you, people who had never struggled with weight, made about people like me." "Have you trained other people who used to be bullies?" Cody asked. "Not exactly. But I've trained people who were judgmental, who looked down on others who weren't as fit or disciplined as they were. What I've found is that most of them, like you, just lacked perspective. They had never experienced what it was like to struggle with their body or their self-image." Cody was quiet for a moment. "Do you think people can really change? I mean, fundamentally change who they are?" It was a question I had been wrestling with myself, not just in relation to Cody, but in my work with all my clients. "I think people can change their behaviors, and over time, those behavior changes can lead to changes in character," I said. "But I also think that change requires more than just good intentions. It requires sustained effort, genuine remorse for past mistakes, and a commitment to doing better going forward." "And do you think I'm doing that?" Cody asked, his voice carrying a vulnerability that would have been unimaginable from the confident teenager I remembered. "I think you're trying," I said. "And that's more than I would have expected 10 years ago." As Cody's transformation continued, word began to spread through Brownsville about the unusual situation at Transform Fitness Studio. The story had all the elements of a compelling narrative: the former bully seeking redemption, the victim who had become successful and was now helping his tormentor, the themes of forgiveness and second chances. At first, the attention was local. The Brownsville State-Graphic ran a feature story about Cody's weight loss journey, though they only hinted at the connection to his trainer's past. But when a Jackson Sun reporter picked up the story and revealed the full details of our history, the response was overwhelming. My phone rang constantly with interview requests from journalists, podcasters, and even television producers who wanted to tell our story. Social media exploded with discussions about forgiveness, bullying, and the possibility of redemption. Some people praised my decision to help Cody, calling it an inspiring example of grace and forgiveness. Others criticized me, arguing that I was enabling someone who had caused real harm and didn't deserve a second chance. Cody, meanwhile, was struggling with the attention. He had agreed to participate in the initial newspaper story because he wanted to encourage other people who were struggling with weight loss, but he hadn't anticipated the level of scrutiny that would follow. "I feel like I'm being judged all over again," he told me during one of our sessions. "Except now, instead of being judged for being overweight, I'm being judged for being a former bully. People want me to be either completely evil or completely redeemed, and I don't think I'm either of those things." I understood his frustration. The media attention had reduced our complex, nuanced story to simple talking points and moral lessons. The reality of forgiveness and redemption was messier and more complicated than what could be captured in a 5-minute news segment. "The important thing is that you know who you are now and who you're trying to become," I told him. "Other people's opinions about your journey are less important than your commitment to continuing it." But the attention wasn't entirely negative. We began receiving messages from people all over Tennessee and beyond who had been inspired by our story. Former bullies reached out to express their own remorse and desire to make amends. Victims of bullying shared their stories and talked about their own struggles with forgiveness. One message that particularly moved me came from a woman named Mary Catherine who had been bullied throughout middle school for her appearance. She wrote, "Reading about your story gave me hope that my own bullies might have grown and changed. It doesn't erase the pain they caused, but it helps me imagine a world where people can learn from their mistakes and become better. Another message came from a man named Jimmy Dale who had been a bully in high school and was now dealing with his own weight struggles. He wrote, "Cody's story could be my story. I said cruel things to people when I was young, and now I'm experiencing what it's like to be on the other side. I want to make amends, but I don't know how. Your example gives me hope that it's possible." These messages reminded me why I had decided to share our story in the first place. It wasn't about attention or publicity. It was about demonstrating that healing and growth were possible even in the most unlikely circumstances. Cody was also receiving his own messages, including some from people he had heard in high school. Most were positive, expressing surprise and gratitude that he had grown and changed. But some were angry, questioning whether his transformation was genuine or just a publicity stunt. One message that deeply affected Cody came from Emma Mae Johnson, the classmate who had tried to defend me during the gymnasium incident. She wrote, "Cody, I remember what you did to Billy and to other kids in our class. I'm glad you're getting healthy, but I hope you understand that changing your body doesn't automatically make up for the damage you caused. Real redemption requires more than weight loss." Cody showed me the message with tears in his eyes. "She's right," he said. "I've been so focused on my physical transformation that I haven't really thought about what else I need to do to make amends." "What do you think she means by real redemption?" I asked. Cody was quiet for a long moment. "I think she means that I need to do more than just feel sorry for what I did. I need to actively work to undo the damage I caused, to help other people the way you've helped me." That conversation marked another turning point in Cody's journey. He began volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club of Haywood County, working with teenagers who were struggling with bullying both as victims and perpetrators. He also started speaking at schools about his own experiences, sharing the story of how his cruel behavior had ultimately led to his own struggles and how the kindness of his former victim had helped him find a path to redemption. Watching Cody embrace this broader mission was profoundly moving. He was taking the lessons he had learned from his own transformation and using them to help others avoid the mistakes he had made. It was exactly the kind of real redemption that Emma Mae Johnson had challenged him to pursue. 6 months after our revelation, Cody had lost 60 pounds and completely transformed not just his body, but his entire approach to life. But perhaps more importantly, our story had begun to create ripple effects that extended far beyond our personal journey. Transform Fitness Studio had become a destination for people seeking more than just physical transformation. We were attracting clients who had their own stories of pain, forgiveness, and redemption. Some were former bullies seeking to make amends for their past behavior. Others were victims of bullying who were inspired by the possibility of healing and moving forward. I decided to formalize this focus by creating a specialized program called Transform from Within. The program combined traditional fitness training with elements of therapy, conflict resolution, and restorative justice. Clients worked not just on changing their bodies, but on addressing the psychological and emotional factors that had led to their struggles. Cody became an integral part of this program, serving as both a client and a mentor to others who were dealing with similar challenges. His willingness to be vulnerable about his past mistakes and his ongoing journey toward redemption made him an effective advocate for change. One of our most successful cases involved a teenager named Austin Lee who had been bullying classmates and was referred to our program by his school counselor. Austin reminded me of the young Cody, confident on the surface, but clearly struggling with insecurity and a need to feel superior to others. Cody worked with Austin one-on-one, sharing his own story and helping the teenager understand the long-term consequences of his behavior. The transformation was remarkable. Within a few months, Austin had not only stopped bullying others, but had become an advocate against bullying at his school. Seeing Cody's journey gave me hope that Austin could change, his mother told me. I was starting to think that my son was just a bad kid, but Cody showed him that good people can do bad things and still find a way to make it right. The success of our program attracted attention from researchers who were studying the effectiveness of restorative justice approaches to bullying. Dr. Sarah Beth Williams, a psychologist from the University of Tennessee at Martin, began collaborating with us to document our methods and measure their impact. "What you're doing here is revolutionary," Dr. Williams told me during one of her visits. Most anti-bullying programs focus on punishment and prevention, but you're demonstrating that healing and redemption are possible even after serious harm has been done. Her research would eventually become the basis for a larger study on the effectiveness of fitness-based therapeutic interventions for addressing the psychological roots of bullying behavior. The preliminary results were promising, showing significant improvements in empathy, self-esteem, and prosocial behavior among participants. Meanwhile, Cody continued his own journey of redemption. He had reached his goal weight and was now focused on maintaining his fitness while expanding his efforts to help others. He had enrolled in a counseling program at Dyersburg State Community College to develop more formal skills for working with young people, and he was considering a career change that would allow him to focus full-time on anti-bullying work. A year ago, I thought my life was over, Cody told me during one of our regular check-ins. I was overweight, depressed, and carrying this massive burden of guilt about my past. I never imagined that the person I had hurt the most would be the one to help me find a way forward. The thing is, I replied, I don't think I could have helped you if I hadn't gone through my own transformation first. The pain you caused me was terrible, but it also taught me empathy and resilience. In helping you, I'm also honoring the journey that brought me to this point. Our story had also had an impact on our families. Cody's parents, who had been worried about his depression and health problems, were amazed by his transformation. His father, who had initially been skeptical of Cody's decision to seek help from a personal trainer, became one of my biggest advocates. Billy saved my son's life, Mr. Brantley told a reporter. Not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. I don't know what would have happened to Cody if he hadn't found his way to Transform Fitness Studio. My own parents were equally moved by the journey. They had watched me struggle with the aftermath of Cody's bullying in high school, and they had seen how that pain had motivated my own transformation. Seeing me help Cody heal from his own struggles felt like the completion of a circle. I'm proud of the man you've become, my mother told me. Not just because of your success, but because of your capacity for forgiveness and compassion. You've turned your pain into purpose. As I write this, 2 years have passed since Cody first walked into Transform Fitness Studio, and 18 months have passed since our revelation. The journey we've been on together has taught me more about human nature, forgiveness, and the possibility of redemption than any textbook or training program ever could. Cody has maintained his weight loss and has become one of the most effective anti-bullying advocates I've ever encountered. His willingness to own his mistakes and share his story has helped dozens of young people understand the real consequences of cruel behavior. He's also helped many former victims of bullying find a path toward healing and forgiveness. But perhaps the most important lesson from our journey has been the recognition that transformation, real, lasting transformation, requires more than just changing your external circumstances. It requires a willingness to confront your past mistakes, to take responsibility for the harm you've caused, and to commit to doing better going forward. Cody's physical transformation was remarkable, but his moral and emotional transformation was even more significant. He had gone from being someone who hurt others to enhance his own sense of power to someone who dedicated his life to preventing that same kind of harm. For my part, the experience taught me that forgiveness isn't a one-time decision but an ongoing process. There were days when I felt nothing but compassion for Cody, and there were days when the old anger and resentment would resurface. Learning to navigate those complex emotions while maintaining a professional and helpful relationship was one of the most challenging things I've ever done. I also learned that revenge, even when it seems justified, is ultimately empty. I could have humiliated Cody when he was at his lowest point, could have turned him away, or made his life difficult in return for what he had done to me. But that would have perpetuated the cycle of pain rather than breaking it. Choosing to help him instead created something positive and meaningful from our shared history of hurt. The success of our Transform from Within program has led to opportunities one never could have imagined. We've been invited to speak at conferences, to consult with schools and organizations about innovative approaches to bullying prevention, and to share our story with audiences around the region. But the most rewarding aspect of this journey has been seeing the impact on individual lives. Every person who has found healing, forgiveness, or redemption through our program represents a victory not just for them, but for the possibility of human growth and change. Cody recently graduated from his counseling program and has been hired by the Haywood County School District to work as a full-time anti-bullying coordinator. His first assignment is to develop a curriculum that combines physical fitness with emotional intelligence training, an approach inspired by our work together. "I never thought I'd say this," Cody told me at his graduation celebration, "but gaining all that weight was one of the best things that ever happened to me. It forced me to confront who I really was and who I wanted to become. And it led me to you, which gave me a chance to make things right." "The Cody I knew in high school couldn't have said that," I replied. "He was too proud, too scared of vulnerability. The person you've become is someone I'm genuinely glad to know." As for me, the experience has reinforced my belief in the power of fitness to transform lives, but it's also expanded my understanding of what transformation really means. It's not just about changing your body or even changing your habits. It's about changing your relationship with yourself and with others, about finding the courage to face your mistakes and the wisdom to learn from them. The gymnasium at Haywood County High School is still there, still hosting fitness assessments for sophomore students. But now Cody and I visit together several times a year to speak to students about bullying, transformation, and the possibility of redemption. We tell them our story, the moment of cruelty, the years of pain and growth that followed, and the unlikely friendship that emerged from forgiveness. The reactions from students are always mixed. Some are skeptical that real change is possible. Others are inspired by the possibility of second chances. But all of them leave with a deeper understanding of the lasting impact their words and actions can have on others. Standing in that gymnasium with Cody, looking out at faces that remind me of our younger selves, I'm struck by how much has changed and how much has stayed the same. Teenagers are still cruel to each other, still struggling with insecurity and the need to feel superior. But they're also still capable of growth, still able to learn empathy and compassion if given the right guidance and support. The scale that started this whole journey is still there too, though it's been updated with modern digital technology. Sometimes I think about that moment 10 years ago when Cody's words sent me into a spiral of shame and self-doubt. If someone had told me then that he would become not just my client, but my collaborator in helping others heal from similar wounds, I would never have believed it. But that's the thing about transformation, it often takes us to places we never could have imagined. The path from victim to victor to healer wasn't straight or simple, but it was ultimately more meaningful than any revenge fantasy I had ever entertained. Cody and I will never be best friends. Too much has happened between us for that kind of uncomplicated relationship. But we are something more interesting and perhaps more valuable. We are proof that people can change, that forgiveness is possible, and that our worst moments don't have to define us. The boy who once called me fat in front of the whole school is now someone I trust to help other young people avoid making the same mistakes he made. The boy who was humiliated and broken by those words has become someone who can help others find strength in their vulnerability. Neither of us is the same person we were in that gymnasium 10 years ago. We're both better, stronger, and more compassionate because of the journey we've taken, separately and together. And that, perhaps, is the most powerful transformation of all. In the end, the weight of words, both cruel and kind, had shaped both of our lives in ways we never could have anticipated. Cody's cruelty had motivated my transformation, but my kindness had enabled his redemption. The scale had recorded our physical changes, but the real measurements that mattered were the growth in our character, our capacity for empathy, and our commitment to helping others avoid the pain we had both experienced. As I continue to work with clients who are struggling with their own transformations, I carry the lessons from this experience with me. I know that real change is possible, that forgiveness can be healing for both the giver and the receiver, and that our lowest moments can become the foundation for our greatest growth. The story that began with humiliation and cruelty has become one of redemption and hope. And that, I believe, is a transformation worth celebrating. Thanks for listening to this powerful story. Subscribe for more stories about the surprising ways people change our lives for the better. See you in the next story.